Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 17th Golden Jubilee lecture of the Medico Pastoral Association. Today's lecture, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Ruksheda Syeda, our young and dynamic and youngest speaker to date for our Golden Jubilee lecture series. Yes. And we're delighted that you're here to talk to us about mental health continuum of Gen Z, and I welcome everybody who's present here, all our family members, our managing committee and working committee members, family members of residents, our staff, and all our well-wishers of MPA. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Before we proceed with the lecture series today, I would like to request our president, Dr. Joseph George, to say a few words in the memory of Mr. Naveen Shiromani. Unfortunately, Mr. Naveen passed away a couple of days ago. He is the son of our founder, Medico Pastoral Association's founder, Dr. Joyce Shiromani, and it is with great grief that we are having to accept and come to terms with it. We would like to honor him. And Sir, Dr. Joseph George, could you please say a few words in his honor, and we can start the program after that.
Thank you, Rohini, for this time. On 24th June 2023, we got the WhatsApp photo informing us that Naveen Shiromani is no more. All the members of the managing committee said it is shocking, it is disturbing, we can't believe. And that was the kind of a news that we received on this day. Joyce Shiromani, as Rohini said, was the founder secretary of the Medico Pastoral Association. And as a family, Naveen too spent his time on Medico Pastoral Association campus, a boy running around. And we have many of us in the management committee, as well as the professionals associated with MBA know him very well. And some of us also know him since last year after the first Joyce Shiromani Memorial Oration. And then since then, many of us were connected with Naveen Shiromani, asking him help. One letter sent to him said we need help with our website development. Instantly he responded saying, I will help. And some way he started helping us too. So we are devices, etc. And he is an IT professional with a lot of technical skills, knowledge in the cyber world. And he is a son, a father, husband, and such a wonderful person. Left too early. He was born in 1967. So he gone too early. Making disbelief to many of us in the Medico Pastoral Association community. And we can only say our prayers are with you at this time. Rest in peace, Naveen Shiromani. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. May I call upon the MPA staff and students, the interns, to please lead the group in prayer before we can officially start the program, please. MPA, could you please unmute yourselves? Yeah.
Thank you. So, a word of prayer before we begin. Almighty Presence, in this sacred moment of gathering and reverence, we turn our hearts and minds towards you, acknowledging your boundless presence that transcends all understanding. As we come together in unity and humility, we seek your wisdom, guidance, and grace. In your infinite wisdom, you have gifted us with the capacity for growth and self-discovery. We are grateful for the opportunity to embark on this journey of understanding and healing, particularly as we explore the intricate dimensions of mental health in this online lecture. We humbly ask for your blessings upon our efforts, that they may be fruitful and transformative. We recognize the immense value of mental well-being in our lives, for it influences our thoughts, emotions, and interactions with the world around us. In the face of challenges and complexities that mental health can present, we ask for your compassion and strength. May you grant us the resilience to face adversity, the empathy to understand others, and the grace to extend kindness and support to those who are struggling. As we gather in this virtual space, we ask for your guidance to create an inclusive and nurturing environment. May this be a place where diverse voices are heard, where knowledge is shared, and where compassion prevails. Help us foster a sense of community. Even as we navigate the boundaries of distance so that all participants feel valued, respected, and empowered. In the pursuit of knowledge and truth, we acknowledge that our individual understanding is limited. We humbly seek your divine insight to expand our horizons, deepen our empathy, and guide us toward greater wisdom. May our hearts and minds remain open to the truths that emerge from the lecture and discussions, and may we be inspired to take positive action in the world, fostering understanding and well-being. We offer our gratitude for the blessings you bestow upon us, for the opportunity to gather and learn, and for the compassion and love that flows through our lives. With humble hearts, we ask that you accompany us on this journey, infusing it with your light and guidance. In the name of all that is holy and divine, we pray. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I now call upon our counselor from Medico Pastoral Association, Mr. Syed Jeffrey, to please welcome the gathering. Jeffrey, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. So good evening, everyone. It is with immense pleasure and gratitude that I am here before you today as a representative of MPA. On this special occasion of our Golden Jubilee celebration, to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you who have joined for us for the 17th lecture. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt greeting and a warm welcome to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Ruksheda, Syeda, a renowned consultant psychiatrist, TEDx speaker, and the General Secretary of the Association of Biological Psychiatry, Mumbai. And we are deeply honored to have you as our guest, esteemed speaker today. Your extensive experience and expertise in the field of psychiatry make you an invaluable resource for all of us gathered here. We eagerly anticipate your enlightening presentation and the wisdom you will share with us. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all the members of our managing committee who have been instrumental in steering MPA towards its remarkable journey of 50 plus years. Your tireless efforts and unwavering commitment have played a pivotal role in the growth and success of our organization. We are grateful for your leadership and to our well-wishers and dedicated volunteers. I extend my sincere appreciation for your selfless contribution and continued support. Now, I would also like to welcome the staff of MPA to this lecture. And a special word of welcome is also extended to the families of our residents. Your trust in MPA and your continued support have been instrumental in creating a nurturing environment for our residents to thrive. We appreciate the confidence you have placed in us and remain committed to providing the best possible care. As we commemorate the Golden Jubilee of MPA, we reflect upon the countless lives touched and transformed by our organization's unwavering commitment to mental health. And today's lecture holds a great importance as it delves into the world of the younger generation, exploring the mental health continuum in Gen Z, youthful, and the brain. Let us make most of this gathering, embracing the opportunity to broaden our horizon, deepen our understanding, and collectively strive for a society where mental health is appreciated, prioritized, and nurtured. Once again, welcome everyone, and thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. May I request everyone to please mute yourselves? I'm unable to mute one or two participants. Thank you so much. Only the speaker would be on mute. Unmute, please. May I request Paripurnata to kindly mute yourselves? Representatives from Paripurnata, please mute yourselves. Thank you so much. All right. Moving on. The thing about mental health continuum is that there is a place for everyone in it, regardless the state of mental health or mental illness. This, of course, results in stigma reduction significantly because everyone fits in. So it gives me great pleasure to, tell you that this is the topic that we have today. And before we can jump into the lecture, may I call upon Dr. Murli, who is our managing committee member and one of the oldest members of MPA, to please introduce Medico Pastoral Association and give us a quick brief about the Golden Jubilee lecture series. Dr. Murli, may I invite you, please?
Only unmute, please.
And yeah, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you, Baravani, for giving me an opportunity to presentation. I'm not the oldest member. Dr. Mohan is there. He might be the oldest member, actually. I think so. And there are various other members also there. Now, it's interesting to give an introduction to Medico Pastoral Association, especially the people who are not been part of the MPA and managing committee know that. History starts like this. A group of volunteers involving doctors and clergy as a part of the rural urban industrial health mission organized by the St. Mark's Cathedral. They started providing awareness programs in the 60s, probably 1964, on mental health, which was very, very much unheard of at that point of time. And this group worked together over a period of time, and the Medico Pastoral Association was born and registered as a society in 1972. And Dr. Joyce Shiromani was the first secretary, and we all consider her as to be the founder of MPA as a halfway home for the seriously mentally ill people. Now, many eminent personalities were leading MPA over the years. It's a very long list, and all of them were doing this as a voluntary service for the persons with any psychiatric disturbance or any mental health issues. And once we know that, and this particular organization's greatness, where we are all been associated for a very, very long period, is that it's a fully democratic organization where there is regular elections for the office bearers are conducted among the members. And we had also gone through organizational cyclones and natural calamities like the pandemic, and we have overcome all this, and MPA is growing. And we also learned great lessons from all these experiences of ups and downs, where there's a lack of residents and there is a number of residents were more, and the demands were different, issues were there. But we learned the lesson, and we have demonstrated that an NGO in the area of mental health have a sustainability over a period of so many years, and we are reaching the 50th year. In 2022 is the year where MPA has completed 50 years of existence. And MPA offers halfway home for the seriously mentally ill, then hostel, daycare center, suicide prevention service, and student internship. And here I would like to mention that Medico Pastoral Association is the first halfway home in the country to develop rehabilitation services for a seriously mentally ill as a residential program, which is a limited period, and it is not confined that for a lifelong care at that point of time. We are observing a Golden Jubilee, the Suvarna Jayanthi year since February 22 under the committee under the leadership of Dr. Mohan Isaac. And the lectures was started by none other than Norman Sartorius. And is every month there is a lecture from varied background of people, not only doctors alone. There has been family members, there have been people representing activism of mental health and issues like that, art. Now, coming to this thing, today is the 17th lecture, and we are extremely happy to know that Dr. Ruksheda Syeda from Mumbai is talking on this, and which Dr. Ajit will be giving an introduction. And with that, I would like to conclude here about the introduction, and MPA will still go on and growing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murli. May I call upon our Vice President, Dr. Ajit Bhide, who will be the chairperson for today's lecture, to please introduce our speaker and inaugurate the lecture open. Please, Dr. Bhide, sir.
Hi, everybody, and hi particularly to Ruksheda. You've already been welcome, but let me personally thank you for responding so promptly to my invitation to you to speak to MPA. The moment your name was suggested, it was very gladly accepted by our team, and we are very happy that you are finally here with us. I have just one request to make of you. At the end of this, if all that has been said inspires you, join us, become a member of the MPA. We'd be delighted to have you as a corresponding member. Right. So my friend Ruksheda has chosen to speak today on mental health continuum, Gen Z. I remember starting out my career as a speaker when there was Gen X. Gen X came and grew old, Gen Y came and grew old, and now we are at Gen Z. So even as we are with Gen Z, I would like to say that I was not so sure that our audience would necessarily understand the import of this topic. So I said, can we have a subheading? And Ruksheda, in her typical sense, your boss, you decide. And so we have a subtitle over here which says Youth, Youthfulness, and I said the mind. Now, Ruksheda is, as you have heard, the secretary of the Indian Association of Biological Psychiatry. And we are very particular about saying that there is no mind without brain. So she said, can we just change it to the brain? She being our guest, we gladly obliged. Now, Ruksheda is not only the secretary of the IABP, she is also the president-elect and vice president of the Bombay Psychiatric Society. At the national level in the Indian Psychiatric Society, she is the co-chair of the Committee on Women and Mental Health. She is an executive council member of the Indian Association of Private Psychiatry. She has 22 years of experience, which is, I would think, formidable. I first remember listening to her when she was just finishing her senior residency at a child psychiatry conference organized by Dr. Shastri in Bombay. That's where I first met her a couple of decades ago. She trained at the Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Medical College and Hospital at Mumbai, and she did a postgraduate training at the famous GS Medical College and KM Hospital, also in Mumbai. She is an author, a media expert, a TEDx speaker, as we just heard that she is a famous person. Her passion project is YAMI, a support group for young adults. In case you want to know some fun facts, she includes this. Memes are her love language. She may be a very gracious hostess, but you will not see her cook. You will not taste her cooking. And she very humbly says, though she likes to sing, you don't want to hear her sing. She may not have you hear her sing, but there is a poet about her in her choosing the title for her organization, Trellis. It intrigued me and I had to have it broken down. So I asked her, hey, Rooks, what's this trellis all about? And she said, the logo is a twig too. So trellis is a support system for plants to grow and flowers to bloom on. And that's precisely the kind of work she engages in. I teased her earlier in the evening and said that you must be a reductionist. So she frowned upon that and said, anything but a reductionist. I am spiritually inclined. And it was only a tease, Ruksheda. I hope you will forgive that little liberty we took. Quite apart from this, she has a number of young psychiatrist fellowships, including one from the World Psychiatric Association at the Asia Psychiatric Congress, Asia Pacific Fellowship, and also fellowships from Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. She has also had a WHO fellowship in the region of psychosocial rehabilitation from South Korea. She started her career, which is a group practice where clinical psychologists, therapists, social workers, they come and meet their clients. I still prefer the word patient, forgive my old 4G-ness. I don't employ them, says she, so we are all equals and we are all consultants. Ruksheda used to have a special educators too, but now her focus was always on adolescent and not so much on children. So now she outsources that if the need arises. Post her senior residency, she never did a job because she didn't like giving leave applications. So she'd like to be a master of I hope this is a unisex word that I'm using, master of her own time. And she does regret, however, the fact that steals from her the facility of a structured job. So a devoted family and young person's psychiatrist over here, also a specialist in women's mental health. Over to you, Ruksheda, with your topic.
Thank you so much, sir. If I knew you would be reading my text verbatim, I would have attempted to be a little bit more eloquent. At the outset, I am humbled. And I think I'm grateful that I did not know that I was the youngest speaker yet in this series. And so that let me be a little bit more, come here with a little less pressure and maybe expectations. But I'm honored, and to be in part of not just this August gathering, but to be part of this event, the century and the lectures and the series that you all are doing is amazing. And it's I feel blessed every day, but today I feel a little bit more blessed. At the outset, I'm going to again, so. Sorry, I'm going to start my slide share. I think that's easier. Yes, can we see this? Yeah, thank you. Yes, these are my disclaimers. These are usually my disclaimers with a little bit here and there. And I can talk a lot, especially about mental health and especially about young psychiatrists, young adults and teenagers. So I'm going to try and keep to my time, but I would really appreciate if when my 30 minutes are up, if somebody lets me know so that I know how to start winding down. Special mention to Dr. Ajit Bhede, sir, because just to be asked by him to speak or do anything at all mental health related is validating in itself. So he really made my day and my month. And so really, I'm really humbled to be asked by him. And in presence of Dr. Mohan Isaac as well, another teacher and stalwart of psychiatry globally, that so I'm really, really humbled to be here and a tad bit intimidated, but hopefully I'll get over that soon. Sorry, just sorry, there's somebody at the door. I'm really sorry. I can't talk. Sorry. My uncle just walked in, and families are families, isn't it? Sorry. So when we are talking about like we said that, when we're talking about what is it that I'm going to speak on today, I did want to talk about mental health continuum, because that's an area that I work from, because mine is a standalone practice as well, but I work with a lot of communities, and I work in various capacities with different NGOs and places. I do understand that there are mental health issues, which all of us understand, that this is, even in terms of I'm speaking today, where am I speaking? How am I doing this? What am I doing? Does require me to be does require my mental health. How do I have my relationships? How do I talk? Who do I talk to? All of that is mental health. As a student, how do I learn? As a professional, how do I apply my skills? All of that requires me to have mental health. And of course, we're individuals and we are human beings and we'll have mental health issues. maybe something that, like a life event that happened, whether it's a fight that I had with someone, or it's a failure that I had in career and academics, or something that I'm missing in life. So mental health issues are also something that we all face, every human being faces. And we do know that there are mental health disorders which are far more common than what ordinarily lay people understand and even accept. So that's why I wanted to talk about a continuum as such, right from when we start from wellness to maybe an illness, and from an illness back to wellness, because it's a sequence, right? I can have a mental health disorder. I could have a chronic mental health disorder as well, and be on treatment and still have an experience of well-being, right? And I could be absolutely, hopefully not have a disorder, not have a diagnosis, not have a chronic or an acute situation, and still experience poor mental health, and my functioning might not be as great as one would hope for. And when we are looking at, in another way, when we look at this continuum, it does mean we're looking at stress, distress, and disorders. So that's the reason I wanted to talk about the continuum, because especially when we are looking at young people, we need to look at them from because they're in a transition. The developmental trajectory is still going on, so we definitely want to look at them from, especially them in the spectrum, in the sense, so that we can better help them become the people they can be, and help them solve the challenges and fight the situations that may arise. But of course, the continuum is for all of us. It doesn't mean that we're only going to focus on young adults, and they're human beings, and we all share this with each other, isn't it? So when we're looking at mental fitness, what does that mean? It means, like I said, good mental health. What do I wear? How do I speak? How do I fight? How do I not fight? How do I make up after a fight? I'm emotionally aware, and I'm thriving. I'm motivated to do my daily activities and be ambitious, and go after my goals. I have problem solving facilities and abilities. I could be creative. I could have, hopefully I also have like a strong impulse control. And overall, my sleep patterns, my food patterns, my behavior patterns are well adjusted and adequate and normal, in that normal range. When we're talking about healthy, right, a little bit. So we're talking about fit, and then we're talking about healthy. We all know and understand BMI from a physical point of view, but some of us might not really understand the difference between fit and healthy. So when we are healthy, we are talking about socially engaged with work and friends and family, recovering quickly from setbacks, resilient, self-aware and managing emotions appropriately, motivated and flexible, and good decision making and problem solving. And again, normal patterns of sleep and appetite and exercise. We could, like I said, maybe going through some kind of mental health issues. That could be maybe when we are in a reactory phase, where we may be a little irritable, nervous, and reactive. My uncle just walked in just now because he would rather talk to me than talk to his elder brother, because I'm more accessible in that sense, and didn't realize that I was in the middle of thing. That could throw me off, that could make me nervous and reactive, and maybe I could also get irritated. These are temporary things that we are talking about. Feelings of stress or anxiety, trouble sleeping maybe because, I'm anxious about something, or I'm worried about something, I'm preoccupied about something, not really very motivated, procrastination and indecisiveness, withdrawing from social networks, and low resilience to daily stressors. That could be me reacting to something that's happening in my environment, whether that environment is internal or external. When we talk about injured, the reacting, if it continues for a bit of a period of time, whether in presence of a stress or the stress has gone away, but in spite of that, I could continue to feel injured and be injured as a human being. and then that will impact my mood. I could have mood swings, irritability, low mood, maybe anxiety, maybe anxious, maybe teary, and lacking energy and motivation to do anything at all. To make a cup of tea for myself might be very, very difficult and challenging maybe. I could have physical symptoms of tiredness. I know I shouldn't be, but I feel tired, and having trouble focusing. So cognitive symptoms, I can't seem to focus, I can't seem to remember things, I can't seem to, execute my everyday actions that I'm supposed to be doing, which I used to be very good at. I had a certain level of expertise maybe in the past, and just feeling overwhelmed or emotional with maybe small things, or maybe like when I have a memory flashback, I could be having challenges with just maintaining my everyday regular schedule, and I'll definitely probably be more withdrawn from family and friends. If I am not withdrawn and I'm still there, maybe there'll be more, either I'm interacting less, or I may be getting into more fights. And unfortunately, if this still continues and you do have a genetic vulnerability towards a certain kind of psychiatric illness or psychiatric disorder, then I could definitely look at ill health. So that means I may be more socially isolated. There could be common mental illnesses like depression and anxiety that could be diagnosed. Definitely impact on functioning in terms of my daily activities, my sleep patterns, appetite patterns, behavior patterns, a feeling of helplessness and worthlessness. I could also have thoughts of either self-harm or suicide, or both. Again, suicide and self-harm can be seen in a spectrum. And in a lot of cases, there is also a resort to using substances because they might seem as if they're helping in that minute. So when we're looking at this continuum, when I read these things out, I think all of us can identify at one level or the other of our life, oh, that time I was fit, oh, that time I was reacting, oh, currently I'm healthy. Oh, I know somebody that is injured right now, and I know somebody that may be going through ill health right now. And all of y'all work with people with serious mental illnesses, and that in itself is very, very shows that yes, all of y'all are used to being with people who require assistance in their health journey as well as their life journey. So I think when we're looking at this continuum, if we can picture certain people in our minds, so whether they are us, whether they are loved families and friends, or whether they are people under our care or we may have worked with, when we bring into a picture of somebody, of a person, or patient, or a situation, it kind of helps us understand a little bit better in terms of, from a more empathetic point of view, what the other person may be going through. And I would request that maybe think of yourself and look at yourself on this continuum, on the spectrum. Where are you at today, and where would you want to be? Why Gen Z? Oh, I do work with teenagers and young adults. In fact, when I started working early on in my life and I decided this is the field I want to focus on, I had more colleagues saying that, okay, I look at the children when they become teenagers, I'm going to send them over to you, because teenagers was somebody that people thought that, oh, they're so moody, and oh, they're so, they have so many nakharas, and oh, we don't want to talk about them. And I never understood that. I was always fascinated by teenagers because I also recognized from a biological point of view the amazing opportunity that we have at that minute, that, when they're going through this transition, and there's so much of growth happening from a neurodevelopmental point of view, of course, from a neuroendocrinal point of view as well, and a social point of view, when they're changing their worldviews. So it's such a fascinating period of life, and teenagers are hungrier for every experience, and hungry for autonomy, and hungry for knowledge, and hungry for all of that, and that makes them really fascinating people. But we also understand at that time that they're the most vulnerable as well, and to be able to kind of be there in any capacity, to be able to help them and guide them, not only from an illness point of view, but from a wellness point of view. It is such a blessing, and if you have that that opportunity to make that kind of difference, it's amazing. A lot of my people, people that I've worked with, this is one person who first said it, that, okay, I'm just like messaging you just to say hi and, hit you up in terms of what's going on and everything. I'm a graduate now and, I don't need to see you again. And that filled me with so much of content that, oh, this person is doing well, and one feels validated. And as a healthcare provider, we know that, okay, this is what we live for, isn't it? That we could help somebody in their, like I said, journey of health and life. So Generation Z, Gen Z, Generation Z, or Zoomers, or however we want to call them, they are the generational cohort that follows the millennials or the Gen Y. They're born in the late 1990s and 1900s and early 2000s. They're the real digital natives, because all of them have been born with a social electronic footprint even before they were born. They've never seen a day where there hasn't been a digital presence in their life, or all of that. So again, these are digital natives. So their experiences are far removed from the people before their generation. And when we are looking at Gen Zs, we know the oldest Gen Z now is, they probably have their first job. The US Senate also has a congressman who's a Gen Z, the first one, in that generation. We also have Gen Zs who are preteens and, teenagers and all of that. So there is that wide spectrum also that we are looking at. When we are looking at, as far as the population is concerned, am I talking about Gen Z just because they're adolescents? But no, we're talking about Gen Zs because a significant portion of our population right here in India as well is Generation Z. And these are the people that we need to help today so that we can continue to have a healthier country and build that citizenry. And as we know that we are even ahead of China in terms of the number of Gen Z population that we have right now. And of course, our neighbors also have a significant population of this cohort particularly. We know that every generation has their own unique experiences and impacts, and that kind of shapes their worldview, shapes their attitude, shapes their behaviors, and of course their health and health-seeking behavior as well. And we also understand that the nature of parenting also makes a lot of difference. So when we are looking at Gen Zs right now, we're looking at their parents. Their parents are Gen X. So, that's the reason I also kind of put this up in that, okay, what are the kind of exposures that Gen X had? They were before that, their parents were like baby boomers, and the generation before that were the latchkey generation, and a lot of us. The Gen X, that's when cable TV started happening. That's where MTV generation happened. And these kind of experiences is what Gen X, the parents of the current Gen Z, have experienced. And of course, we know the millennials and, the Gen Y, and unfortunately, they got termed as snowflakes, which is such a misnomer, really. They're definitely not snowflakes. Having said that, so we do see different generations in a family also, isn't it? Especially in Indian setups where generations live together, we'll have somebody from a baby boomer to a Generation Alpha, and Generation Alpha is the one after Generation Z. So when we are looking at a young individual, we also need to look at their family structure, because that does impact who they are and what kind of challenges, especially mental health challenges, that they may have. When we're looking at Gen Z, like I said, they're digital natives. So that's a huge part of their identity and a huge part of their everyday life. They consume more content. They spend more time on social media than the millennials and the Gen X. Though not a lot of significant difference between Gen X and Gen Z. So a lot of the times when I have somebody from a Gen X period and they tell me that, oh, my child is just addicted addicted to cell phone. And I turn around and ask them, how often do you use your cell phone and for what? And you'll be surprised that there's almost the same amount of time that they spend. Oh yeah, but I'm an adult and this child is a child. But I'm like, yes, but in spite of you not coming from this kind of background, you're still consuming so much of social media or spending so much of time on your smart devices. Then of course you also have to be empathetic that Generation Z are, they're born with that, isn't it? The neurodevelopmentally, we are seeing it that, when we were in school, we would, our actions used to be more like a pincer kind of action. And we would use it to turn the page, or we would use it to thread a needle. And here we are looking at infants. Their behavior is, swiping from left to right or right to left, and they're also kind of expanding and enlarging the picture. And those are the neurodevelopmental changes that we're looking at infants. Just like, the wisdom tooth is disappearing and 10% of the population now has no wisdom tooth. So it's important for us to look at the various generations so that we understand how can we be of better help to the Gen Z. Like Jason Dorsey said, that parenting is the greatest trend that influences behavior across generations, and reflecting on the parenting of one generation also provides insight for the next generation of parents. So the children that we're looking at today, we're definitely looking them as parents of tomorrow, isn't it? So we are definitely, when we're investing time and effort into understanding the young today, we're also investing time in generations ahead of them. So, and when we're looking at Gen Z, again, why specifically Gen Z? Yes, I've always been working with teenagers, but Gen Z are different. In their formative years, they went through this pandemic. It impacted globally. All of us were impacted, and we all have our stories to, those of us who've lived past this pandemic to share and say. Having said that, this was their formative years. Not only that they went through the same uncertainty that we went through in terms of what's happening, what's going to happen, but they're the ones who were also locked down with us. For an adult or a Gen X to be locked down at home was challenging in different manner, but for a Gen Z to be locked down at home and then shift to online schooling, and then, again, still be told that you spend too much time on screen, and how that has impacted their neurodevelopment is still something that we are going to continue to study, and how that's going to change them as a generation. And so we know that there's going to be lasting impact of it, right? And the impact that we still even haven't seen yet. The future of technology, healthcare, and even mental health, right? And now we have chat GTPs, and we have all of these predictive features that we have in our smart devices. And how is that going to change us? So this change that we're looking from the millennials and Gen Z has been more rapid and more, and that we haven't really caught up with them, and we haven't even caught our breath. And every time, the new generation has more and more changes and more demandings. And of course, that changes their worldview. This is the generation which is the most informed, even more so than the millennials. They're the most informed because of a lot of technological advances. A lot of the times, when you have these pre-primary or primary children, and they'll go up to the teacher and maybe they say, they say mom or dad instead of teacher, because they're in that safe zone, isn't it? Now we also hear of stories of, instead of saying the teacher, they said Alexa, or they say Siri. And that's also the difference that we see, that shift in who they identify as their source of information and their source of knowledge. And who do they go to for demands when they have demands and the curiosity, and that something pops up, or for help for that matter. So we are looking at these patterns of changes. And we also know that the Gen Z, unfortunately, has the most number of mental health issues in them than previous generations. Almost 3 in 4 Gen Zs say that the pandemic has negatively impacted their mental health. And on top of day-to-day mental health struggles, many are concerned and uncertain about what lies ahead of them. So the uncertainty that we faced with the pandemic, we may have kind of moved past it, and we may have kind of coming to terms with it and all of that. But when we're looking at the Gen Zs, we know that there's so much more uncertainty that they still have, and tend to live with uncertainties on a day-to-day basis. We know from our own experience as well, because of the pandemic, so damaging across the globe. When we look at it, there is financial concerns and unemployability, and when they're looking at millennials, and they're stuck in, because there was a recession when the millennials hit the job market, and then they got stuck with bad jobs, and they're still stuck with bad jobs. The inability to become an adult, where they may get married and support themselves, have a house, own a property, all of those milestones that we look at may be so much more far and away in the future and unimaginable. And that definitely is very anxiety provoking. They're also looking at family separations, because we see a lot of, with migration to urban situations, and also families splitting apart more. We have more and more higher number of divorce in a family unit. We have more and more single parents that we are looking at. So we definitely understand that, these are concerns of Gen Zs. Yes, we also see that they are more socially accepting of these kind of families and family units. Having said that, but they are definitely facing that, and that anxiety and a concern definitely arises, and that impacts their own decision in terms of relationships and who they want to be. Relationship, again, just like with all the other preceding generations, relationship is a key reason for them to be anxious. I can't even recount how many times when I talk to the Gen Z people, the young people, and they're like, oh, everybody on the dating app is just looking for a hookup and nobody's really interested in dating. It does make you wonder if everyone is looking for dating, but nobody's finding out, somebody to date. And they have these new terms like situationships that further kind of makes it difficult for them to have that stability that a good relationship and a healthy relationship, a long-term relationship can bring. So that lack of companionship definitely is something that also distresses the Gen Z. Also because a lot of their interactions and social communications was on digital, on screen. So sometimes they don't know what to do if they do come to face to face with someone, and they do report that 1 in 3 report that breaking up with their partner has a significant negative impact on their mental health, leading to more stress and anxiety and depression. Also, workplace stigma is something that definitely does concern this generation more than the past generation. COVID and how that's impacted. We talk about technology and how that influences. I think there's so much of data and research and evidence-based that how social media can and does impact negatively, especially the young, whether we are talking in terms of, everyday self-confidence, self-esteem, self-image, eating disorders, and all of those various things. But we need, the social media also means that there is validation to be sought even online. So that's again something that makes a lot of difference. How many followers I have, how many likes do I get? One of the worst things that a young person told me, and this is not because I think is the worst, but because this is something that other people said, that one young man said that I wake up to no notifications. And that is such a scary situation for all the other Gen Zs, because when I share that with permission from that person, that, oh, you know what, somebody said something like this, and they were like, I can't even imagine, oh my God, is that person all right? I can't, go through this. So that kind of pressure is not something that a Gen X or even a millennial kind of understands, because their identity needs to be not only just underlined, but even acknowledged. And if that happens through technology and social media, that's another challenge that we may never be able to comprehend really. That does lead to a lot of loneliness and isolation, isn't it? We know that this generation has been, subject to impacts of loneliness and isolation. And this is evident in their mental health and mental health outcomes that we are looking at. The other issues, when we talk about climate change and eco-anxiety, something that's very common in a lot of this generation. What's also interesting is that when they are aware of their mental health issues, and there's a lot of self-stigma, a stigma that comes from outside, but that gets internalized within them. Oh, why am I like this? Why do I have to be like this? I'm not good enough, more than the previous generations. We also know that there's so many other different kind of challenges, because everybody tells them they need to, and they think that they need to monetize everything in their life, including their social media, including a hobby. And so that kind of pressure is also something that doesn't really allow them to just let go and be be okay. A summer holiday is no longer a summer holiday. A summer holiday is plans about, oh, you're not doing much, you're not doing an internship, or you're not volunteering somewhere. Oh my God, what are you going to write in your college essay, and how are you going to get a job from a campus placement, because you need to show diversity and you need to show all of these other factors and aspects of your personality. So all of that is also definitely an issue. And of course, there are other regions that they have specific issues that they deal with, like in the US specifically, the gun violence and the abortion laws. And of course, I didn't put it up here, but a lot of identity and orientation issues. We all seem to be very confused with pronouns, and what are these pronouns, and why do I have to call her he, she, or why do I have to call him they, and so all of that is something that other people are struggling with, but the Gen Z is owning it. There was a survey recently also that 19% of Gen Z population is concerned about their mental health, which we would say that, 19% of the population being aware of mental health is a good thing. But here, unfortunately, it's not just about awareness. They're concerned about it, that they might not be doing as great as they want to. And that's something that, again, one of the reasons that we need to look at this generation and pay a little bit more attention. So when we have these studies that we have, a lot of them have they're not coming from a psychiatry and mental health aspect. A lot of them are coming from other industry, whether they're education, other industries, consumer industries. And that's where a lot of this data is coming from. But it still says a lot when we are talking about, what kind of challenges and what kind of mental health and mental illness trends that we are looking at. But we also know that there are, catchphrases and mental health diagnoses that are in fashion. A few years ago, it was all about, borderline personality disorder. Then it became everybody has ADHD and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that wasn't diagnosed in childhood. Now the catchphrase is narcissistic personality disorder. And that trend is something that, we do need to also be aware that, okay, what are they listening out there? So when they come to me, how do I diagnose, and how do I not get pressured into diagnosing something, and how do I still diagnose something while kind of keeping the stigma and the self-stigma in our minds. So when we're looking at Gen Zs particularly, we know that anxiety is one of the major aspects. And when we talk about anxiety disorders, we're talking about, again, a spectrum from having more anxious days to I have an anxiety disorder. And we definitely know that this is a continuum that we're talking about, and not just like disorders, but we also know that, yes, because of a lot of different kind of challenges in terms of even neurodevelopmental changes, how might that be impacting the development of the person, and why is there neurodivergence that is also to be blamed for this increased sense of anxiety? So again, why the brain? Because the brain is an organ that's kind of like in charge, but it's in charge more in terms of, it takes an input from my environment, whether that environment is my internal environment and what's happening in my body, what's happening in my hands, what's happening on my face, what's happening in my gut, what's my thyroid saying, what's my liver talking, and all of that, and interprets that kind of information and then decides what to do. It also interprets external environment. Oh, how hot is it? What kind of dress do I wear today? Who's speaking to me? Who's smiling in me in a way? Who's smiling at me? Who's smirking at me? So all of that input also needs to kind of get, the data needs to get collected and processed, and then there has to be an output. So the brain is a fascinating organ, and we know so little about it even now, when we've done so much of, we've taken so many strides in understanding more. So the evaluation of internal, external environment, and this is the organ where all psychiatric illnesses originate, isn't it? And so when we talk about the way I like to put it is, the mind is one of the functions of the brain, right? And the mind, when we talk about thought or emotions or cognition or behavior, we're talking about the outputs of, one output of the brain's processing and function. And of course, the degree and type of change in structure and functions is determinant of also recovery from illness. So it is a seat of disorder, but it's also in charge of deciding who and how much are we going to recover. It's a very dynamic organ. It changes, it evolves, it reduces, it increases, and it's also a very economical organ. The reason I say that is from a very maybe simplistic and a layperson's point of view as well, that the economical in the sense that it doesn't really waste a lot of resources and energies. So if I have a pattern, I follow that pattern. So if my pattern, whether that's my pattern of hunger or my pattern of behavior or my pattern of emotional reactions or my pattern of automatic thought, so it just continues on that pattern. And those are one of the reasons that we have empirical evidence-based psychotherapy that may help change this pattern, and then a new pattern can be formed. So we know that it's also a very smart organ, and so we are concerned about neural development. When we talk about from a perinatal point of view, we know that 3 to 4 months before a woman is getting pregnant, she needs to start on multivitamins, and she needs to take care of her iron, and she needs to take care of her physical fitness and all of that, because we know that the first 4 weeks of a woman getting pregnant, the first 4 weeks is so important for the neural development. But we also know that what a person is born with the genetics gets also impacted with how the person is nurtured. We know early childhood experiences are so important in in the developmental trajectory, but also in terms of whether this person is going to have a psychiatric illness when they grow up or no. So yes, both the genes and the environment make significant contributions to the regulation of how development unfolds. And that's why, yes, nature is important, but nurture is also something that's important. And that's why we talk about who the parents of Gen Z are and what are they doing and how are they, what are their parenting skills. Of course, we can, talk about words like epigenetics and plasticity and chronobiology, but we also understand that these are individual variations. We just know that, okay, these are important factors in mental health and the mental health throughout the mental health continuum. So when we're talking about patterns and how, emotional behavior and thought reactions happen, we understand that there are a lot of connectomes. There are nerves in our brain that are connecting one part of the brain to the other. So there's functional and there's structural connection, and we call them connectomes. So these electrical processes, they're the ones responsible for everything that we do, essentially the mind. And, this is the basic biology of the mind. So we know that, and connectonomics is a study where we explore the brain neurons and the nervous system and, how they're connected and how they interact with each other. And so, this is what essentially mental health and psychiatry is all about. We understand that, okay, if I have this symptom, this may be the connectome that may be dysfunctional, or these are the different parts of the brain that should be connected and are not being connected, and that's why I have a specific learning disability or other things. So what do we do? How do we take care of our brain? Because, so again, at the end of the day, what I tell people is what's good for my body is good for my brain, is good for my mind, and ultimately is good for my life. So I'm asking you to just have a normal, healthy life that I think all of us, whether we're from the medical background, paramedical background, or we're just, regular lay people, we all understand this basic fundamental. So nutrition is important, exercise is important, sleep is very, very important. Especially because, the Gen Z, they have so much to learn, and they have so much, the teenagers and young adults have so full of energy that they will even say things like, why waste time sleeping? And the sleep deficit that may create can be very, very debilitating to them. From, again, if somebody has a somebody has a psychiatric vulnerability, then any kind of disruption in these patterns and healthy lifestyles can trigger that psychiatric illness, isn't it? So we definitely want to be more aware of the environmental process, influences as well. That's why the pollution, and whether that's air, whether that's even noise, water, all of that is so important. And yes, in India, we are more challenged because we are resource poor in a lot of different ways, and that's continuing to impact our young people through genetics and through epigenetics. And of course, that's impacting our mental health as well. And repeatedly performing activities or task-directed affects neural pathways. So achhi aadatein, good habits, is such an integral part of mental health, because when we are even trying to do cognitive behavior therapy for somebody suffering from any kind of psychiatric illnesses, behavior therapy is such an important and integral part. And that's one place that we start first with, because it's easier to do, and that really kind of triggers the change in pattern in the brain that we are trying to achieve, even from a non-pharmacological point of view. Of course, we talk about gut-brain axis, and I am who I eat is something that I think all of us learn, and helping our young people to figure out what a healthy diet and a proportional diet for them is again something that is very important. And no matter what age I'm at, I still need to follow all of these instructions and inculcate all of these on a daily basis. So positive psychiatry is something that I'm very passionate about as well. That's why I think I do a lot of awareness activities where we are talking about wellness and well-being, because at the end of the day, I'm a doctor who believes in prevention is better than cure. And we understand that positive psychiatry and, the psychosocial characteristics of it are our brain functions. They can be biological in nature, and they can definitely be something that we can work upon. We know that these include resilience and optimism and personal mastery and coping, self-efficacy, social engagement, spirituality and religiosity, wisdom and compassion. So how do we build on these when we know that these are important aspects of our brain function that requires our brain to be, that requires a certain amount of practice at these things. Whether, some things is instinctual, I may be instinctually resilient. Having said that, but I can also then build on it, is something that we need to understand and recognize. So while we were, earlier on discussing how biology can be reductionist, not at all. It's not, because at the end of the day, human beings are made of, structures and tissues, and the mind is, like I said, an evolved function of all of these structures and tissues. And definitely all of these things can matter. Family dynamics, social support, and other environmental determinants of functioning, very, very important. And how do we then, focus on all of this so that the mental health on the mental health continuum, we are more working towards wellness than towards illness. We know that a high level of resilience works as a protective factor, and a low level of resilience increases vulnerability for developing pathological consequences of adverse environmental events. So for my ability to bounce back, yes, a lot of it can be genetic, depends on what my stress and my HPA axis and how it activates, but a lot of it is something that I can also train my brain. And when I increase my resilience, yes, I'm protecting myself from preventing an illness to happen, but I'm also seeing to it that, okay, if in the advent of a psychiatric disorder, the outcomes can be better, faster, and I can come out healthier at the end of the day. So resilience is modifiable. This is something that we use a lot of different aspects, including spirituality, religiosity, healthy lifestyle, stoicism, pragmatism, a lot of different ways of reaching the same goal. if somebody, when we are looking at a Gen Z in terms of, okay, they may have a psychiatric issue, or even maybe an, exaggerated mental health issue, what do? We definitely have to have an individual approach where we can help a person one-on-one. Family is very, very important because they're also still very young. Most of them are living at home or maybe away from home, but for studies. The Gen Zs are also somebody, like I said, that they're most informed, most educated generation, but they're also the generation that really needs a lot more hand-holding in terms of adulting, in terms of everyday functioning. So on one hand, though they may be very mature and very capable and independent, on the other hand, they're not as equipped to take care of themselves like their parents were and the grandparents were. And how do we approach them? And, and peers, we all know that, that kind of the peer association can be such an important factor in terms of either triggering an illness or in terms of seeking that support. Peers will, especially at this age, peers will learn more from peers than from their parents or their therapists for that matter. So, are we looking at how do we include all of these people? And that's why also YAMI, the support group that we started 3 years ago, that was my brainchild, and, got together a lot of other enthusiastic mental health professionals. We offer it free of cost. We do it online. We do it twice a month, every second and fourth Sunday. It's a free fluid group where young people can come and talk about everything mental health, whether they are mental health allies, whether they are they are friends or family of somebody with a mental health issue, or whether they have mental health issue of their own as well. So to form that peers and, learning from those peers and forming that community, and, what kind of community services are we offering to see to it that our young people are healthier is again something that we need to focus on. And of course, national policies like this educational policy that we have come up, that we are getting rolled out. We have a lot of, we're cautiously optimistic about all of these changes because yes, mental health is being more spoken about. It's speaking about mental health is getting more normalized, but also understanding of it is also important. When I have young people come in, they'll talk to me things like, oh, I'm low on serotonin, or oh, I got a dopamine hit because I did this. But they are talking about in these languages, and if we don't understand what they're saying, or if we don't speak the same language, they might think that we don't understand where they're coming from. And a lot of mental health experiences, unfortunately, do that I didn't think that the psychiatrist or the therapist or the counselor understood what I was saying. So again, these are things that we definitely want to kind of like focus more on, and that's going to help. Parenting styles, developing parenting skill development for young parents, so that they could provide their children with what they want, because that is essentially at the end of the day, every parent, that's what they want. They want to be able to provide for their children what their children need. And the shift from I will provide what I think my child needs versus let me try and understand what my child needs and wants and see what I can provide. That's a shift that we need to see. And we are seeing that from the previous generation. The Gen X parent is very different from the baby boomer parent. Yes, we do get a lot of flack in terms of, oh, you guys have spoiled the children and you guys have made them, snowflakes. But it's not really that, because if we also don't adapt to according to what our children need, we are looking at more isolation, and we're looking at our children being more unfettered and, then more at risk of developing psychiatric illnesses as well. We definitely have to have more, ways of that we can support parents. Again, certain things like from what do we tell our parents in a just like, in a quick way, what to do with their parents is telling them what to do and why they do what they do. I know from my experience as well, because I work with a lot of people who are maybe practicing religiously. why do I need to do this ritual? If it makes sense to them in terms of why is this ritual even necessary, or why do your parents think it's necessary, or what are its advantages? And then if you make them understand the logic behind something, then it's easier for them to then kind of follow what you want them to do. So they are a generation where they definitely if you create an environment where we are both taking decisions together after speaking, after consent with each other, and understand what your boundaries are, understand what my boundaries are, and why those boundaries exist. So these are the kind of parenting styles and ways that we could help the parents of struggling teenagers, so that they can be of more support to the children, as well as parents themselves feel that, oh, I know what to do now, instead of, oh, I'm just trying to figure out, and the blind leading the blind situation. I definitely always talk about mental health literacy, because again, it's so neglected, and we know that unless and until we really want to try and deal with the mental health issues that are increasing on a day-to-day basis in our country, we want to have more people who are more mental health literate. We want them to understand what it is, how to prevent a certain issue, how to recognize a certain issue, if there is, how something is happening, who to deal with, who to reach out to. Also because mental health is the new bandwagon that everybody wants to get on. So just like any other profession, mental health, in fact more so, mental health attracts more quacks, and so that can be very, very damaging, because we understand that the first experience with a mental health professional, if that is unpleasant or unprofessional, that can set back help seeking from up to 4 years. So we definitely want to keep that in mind and work on mental health literacy. And we want to tell people that self-care is paramount. We want to tell people, ask for help and say no to stigma and stop shaming treatment. Even now, when young adults are so good about saying that, oh, you know what, my therapist said this, and oh, I sent that meme to my therapist, or oh, my psychiatrist said that, oh, my shrink did this. They're so open to discussing all of those things. But again, like I said, the self-stigma is so high, and the pill shaming is still super, super high. So they're like, oh, it's okay if you're in therapy, but it's not okay if you're taking medications. And that is something also that we're still struggling with. And we do definitely want to re-emphasize that, only the strong and wise know when to ask for help, what kind of help do they need, and from whom should they ask it. So again, this is an important aspect of it. We know for a fact that the Gen Z are more aware of mental health. We also know that the pandemic did play a big role in it, because when the pandemic first started, a lot of emphasis was also given to mental health, because we anticipated so much of uncertainty is going to cause panic and anxiety and distress. And so that also really helped in terms of increasing awareness. But we know that more mental health awareness exists in Gen Z. The help-seeking attitude is far more. When we have our YAMI sessions every, bi-monthly, a lot of people will, complain about the same thing. I know I need help. I even know whom to go for help, but I don't have the capacity or the access to it because my parents don't want me to do it, or it's expensive. I'll get DMs all the time. I need help, but my parents don't know and they're not willing. I don't want to tell my parents because then they will not understand and they will say this. So all of those, we are definitely seeing those challenges. So there's more awareness, but there's definitely lack of resources of every kind. And that's where the MPA is, filling in big shoes, isn't it? So at the end of the day, I always say that, especially when you're working with teenagers and you can't not like them. And what's not to like, especially with the Gen Z, they're more informed. Yes, they're also anxious, but they're better mental health allies than we have ever asked, we could have ever asked for. And they have their own unique ways of looking at life and, facing challenges. And there's a lot we can learn from them. So wisdom comes in all shapes and sizes, and it definitely comes, it can definitely come from the youth as well. And I think it would be wise of us to kind of look at them to see what they can teach us instead of only focusing on what we can teach them. again, I am trying to be mindful of my time, and I hope that I have contained it in the 40 minutes that I was given. Thank you so much for a patient listening, and I will now hand over the session to the moderators.
Thank you, Ruksheda. You've covered a very wide canvas. You've fairly justified your not being a reductionist. But you notice that the message of biological psychiatry percolates away sometimes a little way too much when youngsters come and say, hello, do something about my serotonin, or I have too much dopamine. I think this is the kind of message that does not need to go across. So we know that serotonin and dopamine have their roles to play, without a doubt. But the whole idea is that I don't want much from you except work on my dopamine. Tinkering, you're a mechanic who just has to set the right wheel right. The floor is open for discussion. I'm sure it's been a very stimulating presentation by Dr. Ruksheda, and Dr. Maxim says, excellent presentation. It was very enlightening. Thanks a lot, man. So there are thanks for you, but I'd like to know if there are any specific questions for our speaker today. While we wait for questions, I'd like you to know that you thanked, you mentioned me and Dr. Mohan Isaac. Dr. Mohan Isaac is the spirit behind MPA, at least for the duration that I've known MPA, because he has not only been the vice president of the MPA for a long time, then the president for a very, very long time. And through its thick and thin, as the cliche goes, Dr. Mohan Isaac has stood by it and seen that it survives and does well. So we're deeply indebted to Dr. Mohan Isaac on that count as well as many others. And Murli, nobody said you were the oldest person. Nobody said that. They said you're one of the oldest members. I remember Rohini very clearly saying that you're one of the oldest.
Thank you.
But
Thank you, sir.
you're one of the youngest at heart and will always remain so.
So I try to keep it wide because, I understood that while all of us are mental health stakeholders, some of us are medicos and, some of us are paramedicos and some of them are volunteers and lay people. So
we have people interested in mental health. This is thrown open to anybody interested in mental health, not only our members.
I didn't want to keep it very technical and bore you with a lot of jargon.
It was a good mixture of technical and non-technical, and the technical was, to my mind, adequately explained as well.
Thank you.
I have some observations that I might share with you while I wait for other people to respond with questions or comments.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm Maxim.
Maxim, we can't see you.
Yes,
Can
sorry.
we reduce
Sorry, I will do that. Yeah.
No, just a minute. Can you take away the pins? Ruksheda and I are pinned over here. Can we go back
I'll do
to
that, sir. I'll do it right away. 1 second.
Let's have the gallery style.
Done.
Yeah.
Yes, Maxim, please.
Sorry. Thank you for the excellent presentation. Gave me really great light as a parent and a professor. I'm a teacher at Montfort College, teaching MSc counseling and psychology students. Yeah. So I think what you said was really right, Dr. Ruksheda, ma'am. And would you have any tip or a suggestion for parents in understanding their children, current generation children, or understanding young people of today? What should be our attitude towards them? Because I, as a teacher, find them really quite different. I sometimes tend to label them in a negative way, irresponsible, super sensitive, and things like that. So, do you have any suggestion in understanding young people of this day?
Thank you so much for that question. And yes, I think the older we get, we have more of a tendency to look at anything different or anything that doesn't really align with our thoughts and our behaviors as bad or not good enough. So I think, if you look at our young people in a way that, like I said, what am I going to learn from them instead of what am I teaching them? That's a very good attitude to take, whether you're a parent or a teacher. They are more more, because they have more information, and thankfully, because they also have a voice that we have given, help them achieve gain as well, isn't it? So they will talk, and it's always a good thing when there's a dialogue or somebody's open to a dialogue. So simple things like, I want you to do this instead of, this is a good thing for you to do, and these are the advantages. Why don't we start doing something like this? And how can I help you achieve this? And when we see that they are being confrontational, they could be actually just looking dialogue, and they're just asking questions. And we know that from a neurodevelopmental point of view, that when a question is asked and immediately answered, we know there's that link and that pathway that gets formed that is very good for our neuroplasticity of our brain. So when we, on one hand, we want our children to ask questions, on the other hand, we are fed up when they're asking them. So instead of really looking at it negatively, what I tell people, especially when from a psychoeducational point of view, when they have to study, I ask them, what do you want to do? What is your motivation? What are your interests? What can you do? What are your capacities and capabilities and abilities? And what do you have to do? Like, okay, you have to pass this exam because you need to have that degree so that you can get employability, or all of that. And then the fourth comes in, that, okay, how do you think you can do it? So what is the strategy? So when you speak to them in that sense and tell them, why don't you think about it and come back to me, and we'll figure out how to, do all of these things. Because if you want to do something, then figuring out strategy is easier. If you are capable of doing something, again, that's easy. But if you have learning disabilities or other learning challenges, then okay, how do we then strategize, and how do we learn this, or how do we execute these things? So when you're talking to them in this point of view, where you're telling them that you're in charge, you're not responsible for anything that bad's happening, but you are still in charge of yourself, and you're in a position to help yourself. And you know what? I got your back, and I'm there, and I'm going to help you navigate these ways. That's a better way of approaching them, and they understand that. And because they're not trying to be disrespectful, this is who they are, and this is how their culture is, and this is how their everyday lifestyle is. So if we can stop from being offended, we can definitely, I think, be more open to the ideas. And like I said, we explain to them, why do I want you to do some things, and why I think this is important, and how this can be beneficial. That makes a lot of sense. I have a child who's 17 now, had school refusal, didn't go to school even before the pandemic, was getting homeschooled, and now finally 11th grade, she thought that she's sufficiently better, and she wanted to start going to college, and she started doing it. And I'll get a text in the middle of the night. Some people have my personal numbers somehow or the other, and they will reach out sometimes. And like, I don't think I can do college. And my thing was, okay, why don't you list down all the challenges that you have, and what do you think you can manage, and what do you think you can't manage? And the response came that, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm going to do that, and we'll talk about it in the next session. So when you're not telling them what to do, but you're making them think how to do this, that is an approach that works. Yes, as an educator, we have this thing that, oh my God, we have to finish the course. And, even in schools, the portion has to get completed, and they have to pass. And if they don't pass, then it's also a reflection on us as teachers and educators. So they get that as well. But all they want is to understand that for us to see them, because this generation particularly is more interested in individuality and identity, and like being able to express that individuality and identity, whether we're talking from a gender point of view, whether we're talking from another point of view. So having conversations with teenagers was never easier, honestly. And when there is space for dialogue and conversation, there's space for a lot of problem solving.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah.
Thanks, Ruksheda. We have two grandmothers who complimented you, Hema and Ramola. Hema says, thank you very much, ma'am, for this very interesting, enlightening talk. Having grandchildren of the generation, it's gave me some greater understanding. Ramola says, superb message for grandparents. I'm not sure whether I belong to U, V, or W, because she certainly doesn't belong to X, Y, Z, I guess. Had two generations before me too. I'm probably the oldest one here, so relax. Thank you very much. She had to leave. Ramola had to leave. Our president has also complimented you. Thank you, Dr. Syeda, for this thought-provoking lecture. Often many of us worry that about the mental health of Generation Z, but your lecture tells us that they are our allies in mental health. This is quite thought-provoking. And our former secretary, Mr. Samuel Mohan, has also complimented you on your excellent talk. Dr. Mohan Isaac asks you, what is your prediction for the future of Generation Z? Very bright with all the technological advances, AI, etc., or not very hopeful because of a variety of issues that you've alluded to?
I'm always an optimistic, and I always believe in adolescents and young adults, whichever generation they were from. But definitely with Gen Z, I think they have a lot of things right. They're getting, yes, but they're also getting frustrated because there's not enough action being taken, whether individually on an everyday level in their lives, when they are saying that I need mental health help and nobody wants to listen to them and nobody wants to give it to them, or whether they're talking climate change and policy makers don't respond the way they're asking them to respond. So there is a lot of angst there, definitely, but I think they're also a generation that can be persistent, and this is going to help them come out of the other end much better, and not only just live their lives well, but also maybe teach us something on the way. So as far as mental health is also concerned, and when we're talking about psychiatric issues is concerned, definitely more acceptance for diagnosis, definitely more acceptance for struggles, and definitely more acceptance for even treatment of every kind. So a lot of the times we essentially have to get out of their way so that they can take care of themselves. So I am optimistic. I'm always optimistic, and because what do we have if we don't have hope? So yeah, I don't think I'm looking at their generation being fearful for them. I'm looking at their generation that yes, they have challenges, and I'm looking at us. What are we doing to help them get through those challenges? Because we are part of the system that created those challenges. So yeah, I think they'll be fine.
Right. So the answer to Mohan Isaac is hopeful, not despairing.
Yes.
Okay. Murli, you had lifted your hand raised. You want to say?
I just wanted to ask Ruksheda that what happens after Z, Generation Z? Because are we going to end at this? Because the advancement in technology is moving so fast that we cannot even reach anywhere nearby. So will the physical contact with the mind and body, regular talking therapies and things like that, will it become redundant after some time? Because can AI take over this?
Thank you so much for that question. I think whenever we talk about technology, that fear and concern is so front and central that we all are worried about it, that what's overtaking what. But I think when we look at history, every generation has gone through this, that, kids are addicted to books, or, kids are of the idiot box, there's machine and agriculture, the farmers are going to die because there's tractors are going to take over. So we've always had some kind of challenges in every generation where we thought this is doom and Armageddon as we know it is near. Yes, I can also appreciate that this generation with the AI and everything, there is maybe a little bit tad more to be concerned about. But as far as physical contact, as far as face-to-face interactions and not just digital, I think the young generation also understands the importance of it, where we are looking at millennials where they are getting married later, either not having kids or having kids later. But the Gen Z is more about being able to switch off of social media, go off the grid, interact on a human and a personal level. So I think they're learning more as well. And I don't think we are in any but again, this may be the optimistic in me speaking, that we are not going to get obliterated as a race, and we're definitely not going to. In fact, we are looking at more that now we are dog parents or cat parents and plant parents and book parents. So that kind of, I think, understanding and acknowledgement and efforts towards not only relying on social media, like digital interactions, but also seeing to it that there are human interactions. I think it's safe to say that human beings are not going anywhere, and AI is definitely not overtaking anything, especially one-on-one and face-to-face conversations and interactions.
Only she answered your question, so she didn't answer it now. In the course of a talk, she said it'll be generation alpha. After Z comes alpha. Like the Hindu time cycles, we go back to the first letter after the last. There is no end, really.
Yeah, that's
Kala Chakra. Father George Varghese, one of our... Father George, are you here? Can you unmute yourself? One of our...
Yeah, I'm here. Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Can you ask your, can you become visible also and ask the question?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. My question is, let me congratulate you, the presenter, for the well-informed talk. Thank you very much. My question is related to spirituality. Can you throw some light on the role of spirituality, specifically not religion? I'm not talking about religion, spirituality, values and meanings, on the Generation Z, and how others who do not belong to that generation help them in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Spirituality is something that, yes, also, like, one of the things that if we don't nurture and if we don't pass on, it can very well disappear. And that's such an easy, essential, Sasta Sundar Tikau method of having a good quality of life, building our resilience, figuring out what do we do when we are faced with challenges. So thankfully also there's a lot of emphasis on mindfulness and mindfulness-based therapies from a Western psychotherapy point of view that do align with spirituality as well. And because especially when we're looking at this young generation, they are low on discrimination, they're high on inclusivity. They're not looking at tolerating each other, but they're looking at embracing each other, and they're open to ideas, and they're open to suggestions, and they're open. So I think when we, if we do use spirituality in that sense, in the right manner, we can definitely help that and make that a tool for them to self-empower and do their own problem solving as well. Whether we talk about, from a religion point of view, spirituality doesn't mean that one doesn't believe in God, doesn't mean it's about religion. So when we are looking at religion, especially in our presence of God and acceptance of God as a fact and true is pretty easy. So that's why using spirituality can be is a very effective tool, and we use it pretty well in terms of we teach our children, and because we do that, we model and we teach our children how to meditate, be one with the God, one with the universe, and how that helps you focus, and how that helps you figure out and come up with dig up your inner strength. So a lot of these kind of, when they especially Generation Z, when I tell them that, do some breathing exercise, I don't have to explain to them what a breathing exercise is. So we just talk about, do we want to do a breathing exercise that's more meditative, or do we want to do a breathing exercise that's more visualizing? And, am I kind of manifesting some things? So these are words that they use on a daily basis. So I think, when we do talk about using spirituality and using that as improving quality of life and mental health and building resilience, it's a very, very valid tool. How we go about doing it is I think a little bit more challenging for me to answer at this point. And no, I'm certainly not an expert in spirituality of that sort. But yes, essentially, at the end of the day, whether we're talking about a community, whether we're talking about a group, or we're talking about an individual, it helps us to understand who they are. So, empathetic listening is a good tool to figure out what kind of spiritual or spiritual-based interventions that might help. In fact, when I put up this, the flyer for today's program on my WhatsApp DP, so many of people, they gave me suggestions and what the Gen Z need and what we should do. and grandmothers told me listening is the best thing you can do. So, I'm not really just saying this from my point of view. I have an opinion poll that also says that listen to what they want and then respond in a way that, share your wisdom instead of imparting your wisdom. And that I think will be helpful in terms of including spirituality in your everyday therapeutic work of individuals or whatever. So many times I have this young lady, we don't have, when we have our conversations and we, sometimes it's a conversation and sometimes it's a proper session, therapy session and conversations, we do turn around and, use phrases like, oh, tie your donkey and pray to God. And, you need to help yourself so that God will listen to you. You can't just like sit on your backside and hope miracles will happen. You're not Moses, the Red Sea is not parting for you unless until you do some things. So when we have these kind of references, but they're used in a way that's more understandable, acceptable, and meaningful to that individual or that group, I think that's far more effective then. And if there is a belief system of any kind and using that belief system for one's benefit, strengthening that belief system for one's benefit, there's a lot of empirical evidence to suggest that that definitely works. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, because I really don't think I'm in the position to answer this question because that's so layered and so deep. I apologize if I fell short.
No, I think
That's okay.
that's
You did well. You did well. Thank you very much.
And I think one of the things that I would add is make allowance for cynicism. Young people across generations, Generation X, Y, Z, and certain I perhaps belong, as like Ramola said, to the W, which came before X. Young people go through an age of wanting to believe they're omnipotent, and they're very cynical about any of these things. Make allowance for that. So long as that cynicism doesn't get vicious and doesn't become a pervasively negative force.
That's right. Yeah.
I think we have to make allowance for that, rather than many parents react to that cynicism with so much angst or anger. And that undermines any process of wisdom being imparted.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also mentioned, use a lot of stoicism and pragmatism is something that really speaks to this generation, just like every generation. We just use different words. Previously, it was more fashionable to use the term existential crisis. So, it's just the same rose with different colors, really.
Rohini has raised her hand. Rohini?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Dr. Ruksheda, thank you so much for the awesome presentation on a very relevant topic. I had one question for you in terms of, I would like your opinion on that. What do you think about, youngsters, children above 14, under 18 in India, especially requiring parental consent to seek mental health support? So I have an organization, we have a chat-based anonymous mental health support that we provide. It's of course for 15 and above, but the law does not allow us to provide support for youngsters without parental consent. One of the things we've noticed is we have children logging in with fake ages because they are not required to submit a document. But as they chat, they become honest and say, I'm in 8th grade and I really I'm so stressed about the exam, but their actual age they've given is 23, right? And we've had a couple of experiences like that where we had to sort of apologize and, tell them, ask them for parental details. We send out an email for consent. A couple of children have come in and begged us to, please allow them to continue using it because their parents would never allow access to help and they've never got help before. So this is a topic that keeps surfacing. I'd like to know your opinion about this. And do you think there's anything that's going to change in our country?
Thank you very much for that question. That's a space that's very difficult to navigate, isn't it? I mean, like I said, our support group YAMI also, because it's open access free, we do make it a point that it has to be people 18 and over. And I understand that, okay, at age 13, 14 is where there are a lot of issues coming up. As a psychiatrist, I know 50% of all diagnosable illnesses are diagnosed by age 14 and 75 by age 25. So we are looking at psychiatric issues and disorders as a development developmental problem, but nobody wants to really see it at that time. And parents want to live in their own bubble and, live in denial that my kid is fine and there's nothing that my kid needs excepting for they should wake up in the morning and have breakfast and go for a jog. So as far as that's concerned, yes, there are laws in place to protect the person, right? And I'm using the word person instead of a child or an adult here, because yes, they may, even though they may know what might help, but they're also more vulnerable to being taken advantage of. They're also more vulnerable in misunderstanding or misinterpreting certain things that are told or shared with them. So definitely, we want to continue to keep the sanctity of the parental and the family unit as well. That's for their benefit and not really not really going against them. So we in fact, that's a challenge, whether we are talking from a PTA, like a parent-teacher conference, or whether we're talking about psychiatrists and, a parent, because it's a chore to continue to remind everybody, including the teenager and the parent and me, that we're all on the same side, we're all on the same team, all the goals are aligned. So parents don't know enough, and we should only start listening to children. We're doing a disservice to the kids. So while I understand that yes, more parents need to be more mental health literate, but what I can also say is that some urban setups, at least, and some more enlightened setups, at least, have access to they have availability of mental health professionals in one way or the other in schools and colleges, and children can and should go and reach out to them. And if they feel that no, that's not really good enough, maybe they kind of also ask for a change in the and places that they can safely access and have that kind of structure and boundary where they can continue to take care of themselves. And that's where even educators play an important role, and how to culturally sensitively approach that. Okay, I think this is what's going on with your child. You know what, why don't we talk about it? So if people have young people coming in and they don't have parental consent, in fact, we are taking their word that, oh, my parents have not agreed to it. We don't even know whether the child has even approached the parent and said that I want.
They're too scared to find out.
Well, but then, if you're an adult and it takes a village to raise a child, maybe you take a number from the of the parent and go and approach the parent saying that, listen, this has happened, but these are we can't see a child without parental consent. So we want you to understand. So help the child instead of only refusing, saying that, no, we can't do this if you're under 18, because if they don't get that kind of help, and if we don't approach the parents on their behalf, we're not really advocating for their rights and advocating for their right to help.
If I might interrupt, Ruksheda, can that be a double-edged sword? Because there are parents who could be wild saying.
Sorry, sir?
Yeah.
There are parents?
It could be a double-edged sword. I said it could cut the other way. Parents would say, you think you have mental issues, it's all your problem.
How dare you tell me this about my child?
But that's something, but that's a risk.
It's a risk you take.
Because that is the right thing for us to do for the child and for the young person.
I think we should offer, but we shouldn't do it without the child's consent.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, that's, so even in an individual session where the child has been brought to me by the parents, maybe the parents are sitting outside, and this is one of the first things that we talk in during the intake is that what you and I talk about is confidential. If there are certain things that I think your parent should know in terms of self-harm or, drug use or all of those things, I will tell you that this is what I'm going to speak to the parent, and you can either be in the room while I speak to them, or you can sit outside while I speak to them. That's up to you. So that's the level of sharing, consent and empowering the child that we need to have. Because we need to understand that we may be saying all the right things, but the parent and the child is only going to see us maybe once a week, but they have to live with each other 24/7 for the rest of their lives. So we really don't want to be a part of a traumatic experience where it's supposed to be a therapeutic one.
Right. Maria has a comment to make about, she runs an educational institution and she's seen the number of mental health issues getting increasing. She found you very articulate. She also mentions that we need more awareness seminars, and she pleads with organizations like ours to organize educational seminars for parents in schools. You have complimentary comments from Dr. Abha. Faizan wants to ask a question. Faizan, you're here. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question? It's a good question. Unmute and
hello. Audible. Yeah, hello, your Dr. Ruksheda. Yeah, it's nice presentation, by the way. So actually, most of the cases, like 18% cases of anxiety disorder. So I would like to know, in evening time, the anxiety got increases, right? It's a chronobiology, circadian rhythm. So what your perspective versus, because it's most towards the women actually, which I can see. Apart from that, any alternative therapeutic interventions for that, apart from anti-anxiety and other, because Australia is usually actually already using it. So can you tell me about it? In India, how to deal with it?
So if you could have understood, because there was a little breakup, so I'm not sure whether I got the question right. So if somebody could, if you could also repeat the question maybe, because there's a bit of a lag in the network.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell me in the evening there is association between the anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder in the evening, right? There is a circadian rhythm, 24 o'clock, right? So in the mostly it's increased in the women. So you can tell me what are the alternative therapeutic interventions apart from anti-anxiety, right? Like Australia is using the contraceptive pills for using to reduce the anxiety in women. So India, what is doing that? Because I don't think so, because women psychiatry is looking over things, multiple steps. Can you tell me about it? Because
try and answer the question that I think you're asking. So of course, when we're looking at women as in the reproductive age group, especially, their response and reactions, diagnosis, mental, symptomological presentations are a little different from when we're looking at boys and men, because of a number of things. Now, as far as circadian rhythm is concerned, yes, that's a rhythm that every individual, every body has to kind of like follow. And if it's more natural and normal and more adequate, like, if you're maintaining that rhythm sufficiently, that's part of healthy lifestyle. And like I said, what's good for the body is good for the brain, is good for the mind. One of, I think every clinician, not only just a psychiatrist, when we're looking at any kind of disorder, and if that requires a prescription, we also emphasize on lifestyle modification, whether adequate sleep, adequate diet, proportionate diet, exercise, physical activity apart from exercise, maintaining sleep hygiene, and how all of that is also imperative for not only treatment and resolution of symptoms, but also improvement of functionality. So I think anxiety disorders, whatever kind of anxiety disorders, whether we're talking generalized or panic attacks or specific phobias, or maybe even like, anxiety due to ADHD or other kind of neurodevelopmental disorders. So whether a prescription is required, and in a lot of cases it is required, and if I need specs, why am I not going to wear my glasses? So if I need pills, why am I not going to take them? So if I think my doctor has understood clearly, and my doctor is being able to articulate what medications I need, what are the positive effects and what are the possible side effects, and for how long do I need to take them. If there's a consensus between me and the doctor, I should go ahead and take medications, because if I'm going to get better with them, I need to, that's much better for me. Even if I have like a low key but a chronic condition, that's definitely not good for my health, and that impacts my decision making and my life events and my life choices. So it's not just about a disorder, it's also about being able to function and live a life that I ordinarily would have lived and thrived in. So if you require medications, please go ahead and take the medications. Talk to your doctor about how long, what all, ask your questions, definitely have lifestyle modifications, which is healthier for your life and your that's going to aid in your recovery. And of course, also do evidence-based therapy, where you may learn crisis management, self-soothing, and maybe, you know, a cognitive remapping while you're at it. I hope that's the question and the answer is appropriate.
So,
I'm sorry, there was a
I want to add one thing, because I feel in the evening that psychotherapy will work in a better time, because at a peak time when the anxiety is on the peak, I think in the evening actually.
So when we're looking at anxiety
Mindfulness
symptoms,
and other techniques will work in a better option, and the diets are given under a particular time, like between 4 to 6 p.m. Right, so that is the best suitable time to reduce anxiety. Instead of that, can be reduce a dose of the medicine too. So I feel that.
so when we're looking at so majority people, even if they have generalized anxiety disorder, there are going to be times in the day that the anxiety symptoms escalate and can escalate. And yes, again, based on that, what time you know, do I exercise, which is better for me, what time do I eat, what all of that helps in regulation of my symptoms. And definitely you know, the gut-brain axis doesn't really work immediately in terms of I eat something now, I'm going to feel something, but it does also impact my mood. And that's why when I go out on a date, I get strawberries and chocolates. So yes, you know, diet and food and nutrition, and what kind of nutrition my body might need based on my symptoms that I may or may not have, and not just a holistic approach in terms of, like, you know, one formula fits all kind of approach. Definitely that's something that we look at and we work on an individual basis whenever possible. But yes, the science is not as developed that we can dole out these kind of instructions to you know, a mass, but hopefully we'll get there soon. But we definitely want to look at interventions that are, you know, more, let's say, organic.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Nice. Thank you.
I have
You're on mute.
I said, Faizan, I want to thank you not only for your interesting question, but looking at you, I think we had Gen Z actually asking a question. I hope you got me.
Yes,
I
we also have complimentary comments for you from Cherit and Chabayula. But now getting close to closing time. It's quite late in Australia, and Dr. Mohan still has to speak to us. But before that, a last comment or question from our former secretary. Sam, would you like to lower your hand and ask your question or make your comment?
Right. Thank you. What Rashida is one of the brilliant talks I've ever listened to, and congratulations. We are very much benefited by this. I got one question. People having mental illness and also having chronic physical illness, how do you cope up with that one? Is there any particular protocol that will happen? Yeah.
So the mind and the body doesn't really work in isolation. And there's definitely theories out there that we are exploring that are all psychiatric illnesses also metabolic. It's just that the mental health symptoms come in earlier and the metabolic comes maybe a little later in life. And again, what's good for my body is good for my brain, what's good for my mind. So if I'm going to, if I'm struggling with any kind of chronic illness like blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, thyroid, or any other kind of, other more serious physical conditions, that's going to have a bidirectional and it's a two-way highway between mental health and chronic illnesses. And treatment of one is going to improve the treatment of others. So a lot of the times when I have young people with thyroid disorders or other issues, I tell them that because you also have thyroid issues and you also have mental health issues, you definitely need to also take treatment for the mental health issues, because otherwise your thyroid is not going to get better and vice versa. So what I try to soothe everybody is that, listen, all of us have to do a good, clean, healthy lifestyle and good living, more so for us if we are afflicted with something. And the more things we're afflicted with, the more careful we have to be with ourselves. But it's not that much of a burden than on any other healthy individual as well. It's just that we have less of a choice than they do. So when we're faced with a challenge, and if we try to find out the easiest way and the shortest route to health, I think that makes a lot of difference as well. If I'm always also, like, if I am taking treatment for something, let's say cancer and all of that, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that from the day you're getting even evaluated for cancer diagnosis of whatever kind of cancer, and if there's psychosocial support from day one, then the outcome of cancer treatment is better versus than only intervention, some mental health only when required, when it's diagnosable or something. So for everybody, having a better attitude, better mental health is important, because the immune system is related to mental health as well, and that is going to interact with each other. So yes, they will. Every illness has its symptoms, and every treatment of every illness will also have its side effects. And based on that, we have to keep course correcting and do what we need to do when we need to do, and never shy away from what we need to do self-care, so that we can have a healthier life for however long that we live.
Thank you very much.
I hope that answers your question.
Good.
Well, I think we have overdrawn on our time a little, but I think it was worth it to hear your expertise and your wisdom on the mental health continuum with Gen Z. One thing that bothers me a lot, even as I sit here in the play field across from my house, is disappearing for some developmental project. The disappearance of the playground is a huge handicap for our young people. We were never deprived of this in our youth. Subsequent generations have progressively seen the encroachments taking this absolutely necessary amenity for young people's lives. On that note, I'd like to hand over to Rohini. Over to you, Rohini.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruksheda, for the wonderfully enlightening presentation. And thank you, Dr. Vide, for leading us through this. May I request Dr. Mohan Isaac to please deliver the vote of thanks as we call today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to first of all thank Ruksheda for the valuable time that she has given for Medico Pastoral Association. I don't have to highlight how valuable her time is. I know that her uncle is waiting outside the door for her counsel or to deal with the problem. He must be impatiently wondering why is this taking so much time. I must tell Ruksheda, the last time this kind of a thing occurred in a webinar that I attended, where the speaker had to get up from the seat and go open the door because there was a knock at the door, was when Professor Sir Robin Murray, probably the only living psychiatrist who is a fellow of the Royal Society, was giving a talk. And he, of course, like you did, apologized. I'm sorry, they didn't know that I was giving a talk. They came and not his uncle, because he's already my age group. I don't think it was his uncle. Somebody came and knocked. So we know how precious your time is. Thank you very much for accepting Ajit's invitation and keeping Medico Pastoral Association in your wide and long list of various activities that you do in Bombay and elsewhere in the country. I want to also thank a lot of people who make this Medico Pastoral Association Golden Jubilee series of lectures possible, but we have exceeded the time. I do not want to mention everybody. My list, of course, includes starting from Rohini, who is the primary person who writes to people, finds the time, Ashwin, who makes the poster, etc., etc. That's a long list. They are always thanked. But as of now, Ajit is actually our acting president, because Joseph George, who spoke in the beginning, left a little while ago, is going on an overseas travel, maybe later tonight. So Ajit is going to be the acting president for the next 2 weeks when Dr. Joseph George is not there. So I want to specifically thank only 2 or 3 people. One is, of course, it was mentioned that it was the staff, Medico Pastoral Association staff, who gave the prayer. But I want to clarify that the actual prayers were said by one of the students who is doing internship currently with MPA. She's not a staff, but she's doing a 1 month or 2 months internship, and her name is Jane Amanda Kingsley. Thank you very much for saying the prayer for our program today. The other person whom I must thank is Mr. Ganeshan of Microlabs, who have made these Microlabs, and Ganeshan in particular, who made this series of Golden Jubilee lectures possible. We thought we will end by 12, but then there was popular demand. A lot of people said that these are very useful, and so we are continuing. So at that time, we thought that we'll have another 6 more, but I don't think we will stop. This might become a regular activity because there are eminent people like Ruksheda and many others whom we would like to invite and enlighten our audience, our members. In fact, one of the members who runs institutions, educational institutions, have already asked for more such educational programs. I want to tell Ruksheda that there is a Medico Pastoral Association YouTube channel where all the 16 previous recordings of the previous lectures are there. Even your lecture will be edited suitably by our staff, and will probably come by the middle of next week or by the end of next week at our Medico Pastoral Association YouTube channel. If you want to if you wish to listen to your talk, you are most welcome to go to Medico Pastoral Association and listen to your talk. And you can also periodically look at how many people are watching it. We are very proud to say that they don't become viral overnight, but steadily a lot of people watch. And today also, other than the Zoom, we have no idea how many people were actually online watching on the YouTube. But I can certainly say you have viewers across countries, because I know that I'm sitting in Australia and listen to you, and my wife is at the moment sitting in Bangalore and was listening till although most people have left, because of various things, because they said in the chat box, she is still there. So thank you very much. Thank you all the people who contributed to this lecture. And I would end by reiterating what Ajit mentioned. Consider, you are already a member of a lot of, you have started YAMI, you are there in many organizations, but please think of Medico Pastoral Association down south. Incidentally, the oldest non-governmental organization in the country, which is more than 50 years. Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody, all the family members who joined in. And every time when these lectures are there, I look at who are all the participants. We have one small group of very loyal viewers. Then, of course, we have people who come in for specific lectures, maybe because somebody is giving a lecture or the topic is of interest. But every time we have new people, new names, etc. And so this is an ongoing activity which MPA will certainly continue. So I want to end by this. I don't know